with first-class legroom
All right, I gotta find a place to sit down.
and a schedule you can depend on.
No BS. There's something absolutely so inspiring about being able to do work at a building that looks like this. We aren't alone with our aesthetic choices. So, what you get is God making a covenant with Abraham, who then, of course, becomes the father of the ancient Israelites. And this covenant that God makes with Abraham is what's referred to as a unilateral covenant. It's not a bilateral covenant. It doesn't have conditions to it. It's, I am simply going to do this. I am going to make this covenant with you. You see this solidified in the way that God binds the contract. Sacrifices are made, pieces are cut, placed on either side of a little path, and then Abraham falls to sleep, not passing through the actual animals, but that only the smoke, which is supposed to represent the Spirit of the Lord as God moving through that pathway between these sacrificed animals. Ancient Near East culture, this was a way that you would ratify a contract. You would make the sacrifice, and then both participants would pass through. But since Abraham doesn't pass through, only God does. This is symbolizing the unilateral contract. That is, this is a guarantee from God, not bilateral, not conditional, not if you do this, then I will do this. It's just simply, I am going to do this. This is the guaranteed promise. What's the significance of this for the Jews? The significance of this is that God is not going to leave them alone, that the contract is binding, that it will happen. This is a guarantee, which is extremely important once we get into the New Testament, foreshadowing for Paul when he's interpreting a lot of the elements of the Abrahamic covenant. And of course, to repeat, what are the components of this contract? That God has chosen the Israelites, that God has chosen Abraham to be the forefather of the Israelites, and that all of his children will be blessed in his name. But there's more to it than this. It's not just the Israelites. There's also a universal element here that oftentimes gets missed, that this contract made with Abraham is meant to benefit the whole world. That is, the whole world will be blessed through this man Abraham. How that takes place is up for various different interpretations, but it's just important to understand that this is the intent, that there is a universality in this unilateral covenant, in this decision to make this covenant with Abraham. And then the last thing that I think is so interesting to consider is the metaphysics here. It says that Abraham is going to die and go to his fathers, and that he will rest. It doesn't say anything about heaven. It doesn't say anything about an afterlife. It just says that he's going to go to his fathers. And so what I think we see here are the remnants or the continuation of ancestor worship, of a very sort of pre-monotheistic, pre-Christian, pre-Hellenistic, pre-Greek understanding of the afterlife. It isn't go to Hades, go to Uranus, which is heaven, but rather it's you go to your forefathers. You go to the grave, which we'll see repeated constantly in the book of Psalms, Sheol. And why this is important is because this seems to demonstrate that there is a perpetual, progressive, transforming understanding of how the afterlife has been conceived in the Jewish, and then I would say even importantly in the Christian tradition. That it wasn't always just simply like heaven is up there and hell is down there and there's a dude with a pitchfork that's going to torture you forever in a lake of fire. No, those are much later modifications or developments, let's say, that are based on sort of these other nascent and germinal interpretations of the afterlife. So that's Genesis 12 through 15. More tomorrow.